Hey guys, it's the Sad Night here, and we're back with the Legend of Vox Machina Season 2. This is for episodes 1 through 12, so spoiler warning, if you haven't watched those videos first, go watch them and then come back here. This is for all spells and abilities. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and please enjoy. So here's some of the rules I'm going to be using for this spell and ability breakdown. First off, I'm looking to see if any of the visuals we see match any descriptions from any spells. Then I'm going to match it up with the character's current level in this arc, which I'm basing these episodes off of the events that happened in the original stream to determine their level on crit roll stats, which started off at level 13 and went to about 14 over the course of the episodes, with the oldest episode being episode 60 when they had their conflict for the Thunderous bow, at which time they were level 14. Next, I'm going to compare the spell to the actual spell list of the character. Then, if it's not on their spell list, I'm going to look to see if that spell exists within their actual class or subclass, even if it's not on their personal list. Then, if all else fails and it doesn't match their current level, their personal spell list, their class spell list, or their subclass spell list, I will then go to any spell within D&D 5e and Pathfinder 1e/D&D 3.5's source materials to find out if there's any spells that do match the artistic design of this spell to their spell description, even if it breaks any of the traditional molds that the character could or could not use it. But that is a last resort. This is Keyleth of the Arashari. She's a level 14 Moon Druid, and these are her spells and abilities. First off, we have her Druid feature, Wild Shape, and her subclass feature, Elemental Shape, which lets her change into one of the 4 elemental forms. Of course, Matt decided to change up this ability a little bit and made it where when she completed one of her Aramente challenges, she would obtain the elemental form instead of just receiving all 4 of them immediately at this level. In this season, we get to see her complete the Fire Elemental trial, and so she gets the Fire form. We also get to see her use her first level ability Entangle on both a Slime in the Feywild, and of course the Dragon Umbrasil. Next we have the second level spell, Flaming Sphere. Now my reasoning for this one is pretty simple. It is a large fireball, which is a sphere and is actually on Keyleth's spell list. However, the biggest issue with this spell, of course, is its duration. It lasts a very short period of time and they're clearly traveling for long distances. However, Matt Mercer is known to change the duration of spells, especially for Keyleth. So this could just be an artistic change here. Another good potential example, of course, would be Produce Flames. However, it doesn't match the description as well. It is, of course, a cantrip that you can reproduce over and over again, which would allow it to survive the course of the duration of their travel. Next, we have the Gust of Wind spell. What makes this different than just the general cantrip Gust is, of course, the distance in which it pushes objects and creatures away. We can see by the radius of the blast, it does look like it's pushing further than normal, although you can't see it all completely in that picture, honestly. But basically, Gust pushes about 5 feet away, and Gust of Wind pushes 15 foot away. Since the blast actually in the scene is pretty far in this moment right here, it's most likely Gust of Wind. Right here we have an example of Speak with Plants. Just like we saw in Season 1, she just started randomly talking to a plant. This might be a reference and not an actual cast, but right here she's talking about how she understands that the trees have gone through some type of blight and that they're suffering. So I'm assuming that she communicated with them. So next we have Sleet Storm. Honestly, the ice spells are one of the most controversial ones to talk about because everyone disagrees on what they are. My reason for picking Sleet Storm in this case is because of the description in the spell where it talks about covering the ground in ice and of course potentially knocking an opponent prone. We see the onlooker getting covered in ice in this scene, and of course in the following scenes we see Kevdak where the ground gets covered in ice, and it looks like it also kind of pseudo knocks him prone as it partially encompasses him in ice. So next we have Wind Wall. Now this one's a little deceptive because it looks like she's just controlling water, but she mentions in this scene that she actually can only majorly use wind spells and not water spells. So the best one to divide and separate this large wall of water using wind would be Wind Wall. And of course we see it comboing with Zarya's Telekinesis ability, which we will talk about in her section. Right here we have a perfect example of Grasping Vine as it grabs Grog and pulls him away from the enemy. So next we have the awesome combo she used in the original campaign where she of course cast Tree Stride and then transformed into a fire elemental and pass through them to light them on fire. Now in this scene we see here, she actually does it in the reverse. She transforms into the elemental first and then casts, which she shouldn't be able to do until she's a higher level, but they're just taking some narrative rule of cool here and just adjusting the scene. And even in the moment, realistically, Matt just allowed it to slide regardless of any technical issues that might have happened with this, because fire elementals can actually just pass into your space and light the trees on fire anyways. Next we have an example of Move Earth, as she uses it as a shelter to hide as they prepare to fight Umbrasil. Next we see an example of the Wall of Thorns spell she's used multiple times since this season and the first season, and she even combos it in this season by having Vex light it on fire to create a pseudo wall of fire. Next, of course, we have the 6th level spell Transport via Plants. And finally, we have her Plane Shift ability, which she actually learns during this season and lets her shift from one plane of existence to another, like the Fey Realm. And we even see some examples of her using material components and keeping concentration on her spell in this scene. Lastly, we have a possible magical item, as of course Druids do not traditionally have the light spell, but she goes over and actually lights up her crystal, very similar to what you would see with like Gandalf the Grey did in Lord of the Rings. So this is most likely not a spell of hers, but is probably a magical item in the crystal. Next we have Pike Trickfoot, a level 14 war cleric of the goddess Searing Ray, the Everlight. First, we see her using the cantrip Light to illuminate this dark pathway. So right here, we actually have a first level spell from Pathfinder in D&D 3.5, which the game was originally ported from, known as Call Armor. We also have her first level spell Cure Wounds, her first level spell Detect Magic, her first level spell Shield of Faith, which she uses quite often in the series. We have her second level spell Spiritual Weapon, which she actually wields like an actual weapon, although every now and again she throws it and uses it from a distance, which is pretty cool. We have a third level spell from Pathfinder in D&D 3.5 known as Searing Light. This one's actually on her spell list, which actually helps us determine what the spell is. Here we have the fifth level spell Scrying, where she peeks in on Thordak and the other dragons from the Chroma Conclave. This one right here, actually, thank you guys from the community for a great call out. I couldn't remember what the actual spell was at the time, and when I tried to look it up, all I got was Sunburst and Sunbeam. But the actual spell I was looking for, and you guys were so helpful in helping me find it, was the fifth level spell Flame Strike, which actually narratively explains this moment far better than Sunbeam or Sunburst, so thank you guys for that. Next we have Scanlan Shorthall, a level 14 bard from the College of Lore. It's been brought up to me by the community that every time Scanlan Shorthall is rocking out with some awesome music, it's actually hyping up the party, meaning that this is most likely an example of him using his bardic inspiration. Right here we have the cantrip Minor Illusion, as he creates little sparkle effects in his music routine, followed by the affectionately named Bigby's Butt, which appears to of course soften their landing, although it's not exactly narratively the same. This is most likely the first level spell Featherfall, as it was used to break their fall. Right here we have the third level spell Major Image, which actually he uses multiple times in incredible degree during this season, including this big monster here, and of course the musical number right here. Right here we have the third level spell Lightning Bolt, which of course we can see actually in this scene he's casting from his musical instrument that he's keeping kind of low to his hips, and of course we know where he likes to cast this spell from traditionally, so it might be a little reference to it right here, while keeping it in aligned with the fact that he does cast from his musical instruments. Right here we have the fourth level spell Polymorph, which we of course saw in season 1, him learning it from a scroll, which traditionally he actually just had as part of his spell list, but it's really cool that they show it here. And we see an example of him either running out of his duration of his spell or losing his concentration. Of course we have the iconic fifth level spell Bigby's Hand, and of course we get to see multiple examples of it, from it taking damage to him using it as a hand or a foot or so forth, and even showing that of course it has grip strength as it tries to hold him and Pike from being pulled in by the onlooker. And of course we have some magical items he uses, including the immovable rod, which has been reskinned as a sword that he got from his daughter, a magical key, which everyone in the community is actually saying is most likely the key to his magnificent mansion, a spell that he originally used in the original campaign, and of course his vestige of divergence, Mythcarver. In this scene, we do see that Mythcarver is harmonizing with his music, which it is a bardic sword that does harmonize with his bardic inspiration abilities and gives him additional boosts. And we see an example of it using the second level spell Locate Object as a natural feature of the blade, which both he and Umbrasyl use in this season. Next, of course, we have Vexalia, Mistress of the Grey Hunt, a 13th level ranger, subclass Beastmaster, with a level 1 rogue, subclass Assassin. Of course, Vexalia does actually have a couple spells. We do not really see her use any of them in the season, but we do see her use a series of magic items, including her blazing bowstring, which allows her bow to shoot fire arrows. We see a handful of the magic arrows as an example that she took from Gilmore's Glorious Goods. And of course, we see her vestige of divergence, Fenthras. Now, of course, Fenthras has many abilities, including the ability known as Bramble Shot, which she can use to shoot at an enemy and cause him to get entangled by a series of vines. We also see an example of the Flame Arrow ability, which actually was from her Blazing Bowstring, but now they have actually just added it in as a natural ability with Fenthras. And of course her ability to shoot lightning from Fenthras, which is actually one of its abilities. Next, we have the item that originally looked like it was a little pouch for holding cards, and a lot of people, including myself, thought it was the deck of many things because they were putting things out of order, so it was very possible. We do know at the end of the series, in the layer of Thordak, we are going to see the deck of many things in the future, but not now. In later episodes, it was revealed what this item actually was. It is a miniature bag of holding. You could say that it's similar to the haversack that Jester uses, although that was a backpack, and this just seems like a little pouch, but it does actually look a lot like the artwork that was made for the bag of holding. But I do not see any like body parts coming out of it when she opens it, and it doesn't seem to give off any like frost or like cold features when she's opening it. She just pulls the broom out of it, so as far as I can tell, it's just a miniature bag of holding. Next, of course, we see the magical item, the Flying Broom, which she originally got from a guest star in the original series, whose name is actually inscribed on the broom, and of course it lets her fly. Fun fact, the favor that Scanlan most likely wants, at least in the original stream I believe, was that she wear a witch's hat to get the whole witch vibe ensemble while she uses the broom, which is actually an item that we could see in Gilmore's Glorious Goods in Season 1. Next, of course, we have the magical item Raven Slumber, which was originally on the body of Pravan Sul in the original campaign, but of course is given to her by Zarya in this one. The Raven Slumber actually originally held the companion of Pravan Sul, which is a wolf, and of course now she uses it for Trinket to hold him in there and keep him safe, and of course if he was to die or run low on HP, he just pops back into the item. Very similar to how familiars just poof out of existence. This keeps him safe because he would die a lot, or just they would leave him behind because they didn't want him to die a lot. And it is difficult to travel a nearly, I'm assuming, 1,000-pound bear around with them wherever they went. They refer to this item as the Pokeball in a lot of cases, as that's what it kind of did, and actually they did put Grog in it a couple different times, including the major scene where he defeats Kevdak, and actually in a one-shot where they were actually having a battle royale and trying to kill each other, and they put Grog in there to actually keep him out of the fight for a while, and he actually broke out of it. Next we have Percival Frederickstein von Musel Kowalski de Rollo III, who is a 14th level fighter subclass gunslinger. Outside of any, of course, examples of him potentially using his action surge and, of course, extra attacks, the main thing to notice in this season that he uses is his magical item that he created himself known as Diplomacy, which allows him to electrocute his enemies. It also has the ability to cast a silent spell, but we don't see that in this season. Next, of course, we have Vaxeldan, a 13th level rogue, subclass assassin, with a 1st level paladin, subclass Oath of Vengeance. And of course, we don't see him use any spells, but we do see him use a series of magical items, including his Blink Back Belt, where we see here he actually is recalling the daggers so he can re-throw them at the enemy. We see an example of his Flametongue dagger, which he uses mostly as a light source, and every now and again to attack people. And of course, we see an example of his Boots of Haste, but this time they've actually taken the haste feature from his boots and actually added it to his Vestige of Divergence, the Deathwalker's Ward. We also see actually the Deathwalker's Ward Awaken, which is one of its multiple different stages of development that all Vestiges of Divergence have, which includes a dormant state, an awakened state, and an exalted state. And we actually see the exalted state as he gains the wing feature. Fun little detail actually that was not necessarily represented in the season, the Deathwalker's Ward actually has the ability to give you resistance to a specific damage type of your choice if you take a short or long rest, I believe. During the fight with Umbrasyl, he chose Acid. Next we have Grog Strongjaw. He's a level 14 Barbarian, subclass Berserker. The first and major feature we're going to see from Grog, of course, is his Rage. And actually in this scene right here, another person pointed out that there's also the possibility he was using his racial feature, Stone's Endurance. So I give a little credit to that as well. Telling the difference between damage reductions between the Rage and subtle details of the Stone Endurance is pretty difficult, but I'll still acknowledge it because it was a really good comment by the comment section. Thank you guys so much. Next, of course, we have the feature of Frenzy Rage, where he goes even more beyond with his Rage and loses all control for a short while. Next, we have Grog's Danger Sense. We see several moments where he actually stumbles upon a trap and actually intentionally triggers them without realizing what they are. It's shown in several scenes that not only does he witness the trap and end up activating it, but it even shows him successfully dodging a few of them, which Danger Sense does give you advantage on dexterity saving throws against traps. And of course, Grog has magical items as well, including Craven Edge. And of course, we see several features of Craven Edge, including his Devour the Weak, where he absorbs the blood of his victims, stealing their strength and giving it to his wielder. Once he has absorbed enough blood, we do get to see his feature Gluttonous Evolution, where he changes in size and shape and adds additional damage bonuses to his attacks. And next we see a Curse feature. Now, Curse of Binding is actually the name of a curse in Minecraft, but I feel it suits well for the actual mechanical effects of the curse that Craven Edge has, which is of course that the person must make a wisdom saving throw if they try to relinquish wielding this weapon, which of course Grog did try to do against his fight with Earthbreaker Groon, as he tried to pick up his flaming warhammer instead. Next we have Grog's Belt of Dwarvenkind. Not only does it give him a beard, but contrary to what Cash said, that's not the only thing it does. This magical item also gives him an increase of 2 to his constitution score, advantage on persuasion checks when interacting with dwarves, advantage on saving throws against poison and resistance to poison damage, dark vision within 60 feet, and if Grog could read or write, which he can't, he can speak, read, and write Dwarvish. Next, of course, we have Grog's Vestige of Divergence, the Titanstone Knuckles. The Titanstone Knuckles actually have the 2nd level spell Enlarge and Reduces and Large ability built into it. And so we see that facet of this feature right here. Zarya is a 13th level Warlock, subclass Great Old One. As Zarya is a Warlock, one of the main spells that she uses a lot is her cantrip Eldritch Blast, which we can see her using to protect Vexalia in this scene right here. We see the 1st level spell Floating Disc. We see a possible example of the 1st level spell Hellish Rebuke, as when she uses this ability, and she uses it in several different scenes here, she seems to be reacting to being attacked by an enemy. Usually you have to take in damage first before you can hit them with Hellish Rebuke, but this seems like this might be a small artistic change where she's just reacting to being attacked instead. And we see several different examples that could possibly be Hellish Rebuke here. We also have her 5th level spell Telekinesis as she lifts Scanlan Shorthaul out of the Icy Lake. We also see the 6th level spell Find the Path as she uses it to figure out where the temple is actually located. Kasha is a 13th level cleric, subclass Domain of Life. We see Kasha use a 1st level spell Shield of Faith. As we see with Pike, she actually can enlarge the shield to block multiple people, which is traditionally not how the shield works, but it has been artistically adjusted for the show. And so most likely this is the exact same spell, as they are both clerics, and this is a large faith-driven shield protecting his party. We also see his example of spiritual weapon, and we see the 3rd level spell Revivify, as he was talking about the body needing to still be warm in the attempt at casting the spell, and other forms of resurrection do not need the body to be immediately dead to use as a revival spell, and actually in this moment that's exactly what he used, which was Revivify. We also see an example of the 5th level spell, Greater Restoration, as he tries to undo the petrification of the fellow members of his party. And finally, we do get to see him use an example of the 6th level spell, Find the Path. Next, we have Ilora Vysurin. She's between level 15 and 16, and she is an Abjuration Wizard. Since she is one of Matt's NPCs, she does not necessarily have direct player stats, and none were revealed on Critical Role stats. That's why most of her stats are blank here. Next, we see the 2nd level spell, Earthbind. Thank you guys so much. This was actually a suggestion from the comment section, and I totally agree. It narratively, description-wise, actually matches far better than Hold Monster, but at the time, I was just too close to it and working too hard on so many spells that I kind of overlooked it, and I really appreciate the support. It really helps to have a second pair of eyes on this, especially when I'm too close to it at the moment. I am pretty confident to say now, thanks to the community's help, that this is the 2nd level spell, Earthbind. Right here we see an example of the 5th level spell Scrying, and right here is the 5th level spell Wall of Force. Several awesome suggestions were talked about a couple of different spells that could have been it because of the description of the Shimmering Barrier, which I do agree. This spell matches quite greatly to that description. However, of course, Wall of Force actually keeps all objects out, including the smoke and the physical person. So that's why I'm leaning more towards this spell than the other ones. Right here we see the 7th level spell Teleport. It's actually a part of Ilora Vysurin's spell list, and she was seen using it several times in multiple campaigns. And of course, she is very familiar with this area, so using this spell is less detrimental to her than it usually would be. Next, we have Kima of Vord. She is classified as being at least level 15+, and she is a Paladin subclass Oath of Devotion. This is another one of Matt's NPCs, and her stats were not listed on Critical Role stats. Right here we have an example of the 1st level spell Thunderous Smite, and right here we have another example of the 3rd level spell Searing Light from Pathfinder, as this way looks very similar to the way Pike cast this spell. Next we have Sean Gilmore, classified as being level 13+. He is a Sorcerer subclass Rune Child. Just like before, he's another one of Matt's NPCs, and his stats are not listed on Critical Role stats, at least as far as I could find. So here we see the 5th level spell Wall of Force, with a change of flavoring for it being casted by Gilmore instead of Alora. Right here we see a magical crystal with the 7th level spell Teleport in it. And of course at the end we see Gilmore and Alora team up to create a customized spell that they referred to as a Cloaking spell. In the original stream, this was made by Matt to narratively explain why the dragons were not able to find Whitestone, at least for a while. So technically this is not an official spell within the actual player's handbook or anything, but of course it is actually a spell created by Matt for his game, although it doesn't have any name or level associated with it. Next we have the 2 Sphinxes. I know a lot of people asked about them, but honestly they were a bit confusing at the time, so I decided to take more time for this video to go over their abilities. First off, we have the Andrio Sphinx, Kamal Giori. So first up we have the 1st level spell Shield. Next we see an example of the 5th level spell Telekinesis, as it holds grog and it stops these daggers. And next we have his mate, a Gyno Sphinx, Osisa. Right here we have the Pathfinder spell Projection, which allows you to send images into people's minds. This was actually the spell that Osisa used in the original stream to show the characters the vestiges of divergence. And honestly guys, right here at the very end we have these 2 prepared like beam spells, one that's being prepared to be shot out of the forehead of Osisa, and right here we see these beams being shot out of the eyes of Kamal Giori. However, I can't really place what they are. Just being energy beams alone does not really give me enough descriptors of what type of spells being cast here, or of course if it's an innate ability. If any of you guys have any really good suggestions right here, it'd be really appreciated. Hit me down in the comment section below. Next we have Earthbreaker Groon. Listed as 17+, Monk, Way of the Open Hand. As one of Matt's NPCs, of course, he does not have all his stats listed, although the ones that are listed are hyper-exaggerated because he was also used as a boss monster in a fight against Grog and Vax in the original stream. I would have actually liked to see the key points being represented artistically. Maybe some type of glow or something in his arms as he was channeling ki would have been kind of cool, but we didn't get that. But we do see elements that could represent several of the features of the monk class, including a flurry of blows, where we see him attack him with a series of fists and elbows and even some kicks. We see an example of him strike Grog, and actually Grog gets pushed away and he stays on the ground for a few seconds, possibly representing a stunning strike as he was stunned for a round. We see a possible example of patient defense as we see Earthbreaker Groon dodge a couple of Grog's attacks. And of course we see him use some features from his subclass. The first possible subclass feature we see here is Tranquility. When a monk meditates, they have the ability to cast the 1st level spell Sanctuary on themselves. And we see several possible examples of the open hand techniques. When Groon hits Grog with his flurry of blows, he may impose several following effects, including a dexterity saving throw that knocks Grog prone, and a strength saving throw that actually can push him 15 feet away. which we see multiple examples of Grog being pushed several feet away, easily 15 or more, and several different times where he is laid flat on his back. Thank you from the comment section actually for pointing this out to me, as I originally had overlooked it in the original videos. Next we have Garmelie. This is his satyr disguised form, but of course we know this is the Archmage Artagan, also known as the Traveler. Here we see a possible example of either possibly thaumaturgy or maybe even a magic mouth. It's a bit of a stretch, but these two spells allow you to project your words, so it's possible that he was able to use that, plus maybe even a minor illusion of some sort to make this talking ass. Next we have some possible examples of Misty Step, as he warps only a couple feet from these branches right here to floating right next to Percy. We have a possible example of the second level spell Invisibility, as Garmelie actually mentions in the episode, and he does multiple times, that he goes invisible. We have a clear example of a second level spell Levitate, as he is levitating, and it's not a natural feature as far as I'm aware from his racial traits. We have the second level spell Alter Self. He is not being altered into this elven type form, he is actually reverting back to his original form, as Garmelie would be the Altered Self. Altered Self is different than Disguised Self. Disguised Self is just an illusion, and if you attempt to touch somebody, you can actually pierce through it and reveal that it's not real. And we know that Vex'ahlia actually grabs Garmelie, picks him up, and drops him, so she actually had physical contact with him. Alter Self allows you to actually alter your form to a similar sized creature, and you actually take on attributes of that creature, so if someone was to touch you, you would appear to really be that creature. And right here at the end, we see Artagan warp away again. We don't see how far away he warps to, but it is most likely a high-level teleportation spell, so my best guess right here would be most likely teleport. We have an example of the 9th level Gate spell, as he opens a portal from one realm to another one. Next, of course, we see this council in this episode as they cast a spell onto the wall of water. I opened this up to the community to discuss and figure out, and honestly, you guys came back with some great feedback. One of the 3 spells I was actually leaning towards was Legends Lore, and a lot of you said that you agreed with that was the spell, and so honestly, I'm gonna go with you guys on this one. The council cast the 5th level spell Legends Lore. Next up, of course, we have the Chroma Conclave members, starting with their leader, Thordak, the Cinder King. He is an ancient red dragon that is altered with the soul anchor in his chest, which is actually connecting him to the fire plane and is actually slowly mutating his body and enhancing it. The first dragon feature we see, of course, is Fire Breath, followed by the appropriately named Atomic Breath. That's a reference to Godzilla. Next we have Vorogal, the Frigid Doom, who's an ancient white dragon. We see him using his dragon feature Ice Breath, followed by a feature that appears to be True Sight, as of course he gets a coating over his eye and then he can see through illusions, which is a traditional trait of True Sight. However, this is usually not found on dragons, although he can be homebrewed and altered. You do see this on one dragon at least, Tiamat. Next we have Umbrasyl, the Hope Devourer, who's an ancient black dragon. We see several really cool features from this dragon, including its feature Acid Breath, a possible example of legendary resistance. We see some examples of spellcasting from Umbrasyl with the 1st level spell Cure Wounds, and of course the 4th level spell Greater Invisibility. Next we have Vraishan, the Diseased Deceiver. She is an ancient green dragon, and these are some of the features that we see her use, including her feature Poison Breath, Change Shape, and of course we see her ability to cast spells, including the 1st level spell Shield, and the 3rd level spell Dispel Magic. We do see the Chroma Conclave wield a magical item, including a Sending Stone, that they use more like a magical projection of the person that they were talking to. Next we have a Kutoa Archpriest. In the original stream, when they were fighting the Beholder, it was worshipped by some Kutoa, and included a Kutoan Archpriest, who is the main leader of their group. We see him use the 4th level spell Control Water, which has a couple different sub-features, including a couple examples of Redirect Flow, and of course the Whirlpool feature. Next we have Critical Role's brand new Beholder called the Onlooker, which has a couple different Beholder-like abilities that have been reskinned. First off, we see the feature Petrification Ray, which is now a form of grappling tentacles that release a type of charge through them that helps petrify you, which is pretty cool. And we do see an example of the anti-magic cone, as we see it coated with magic, and then all of a sudden the magic is dissipated by the anti-magic cone. And of course, last but not least, we have the Face Slime from the Feywild. The first feature we see it use is the corrosive form, as it burns the shoe of Vax'ildan, and of course burns the arrows of Vex'ahlia. Next we see an ability that is most likely, from what I could find, a Pathfinder 1E or D&D 3.5 ability that can be found on some slimes, called Euphoric Slime. It causes a person to basically be in like a confusion type state where they laugh hysterically. And this is the closest description of an ability that I was able to find that kind of matches this moment right here. Next we see a feature that is usually just referred to as Split in D&D 5e, but of course in Pathfinder 1e and D&D 3.5e there was also a merge feature which basically allowed the slime to be reformed from its individual parts. Hey guys, it's the end of the video, and I just wanted to thank you guys for watching. You guys have been an amazing community, and I can't wait to see you guys again in Season 3 of Legend of Vox Machina and Season 1 of The Mighty Nine. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.